Excellent.
Okay, let's get started. All right, we are on Kapitel Lamed Aleph, number 31. This is kind of long, and I don't think we're going to get through the whole thing today. But it's an important kapitel. It's a little bit complicated. It seems to be talking mainly about getting through the Golus, the Galut. Just being able to survive, and how do we deal with it, given that we're far from perfect, and we've done a lot of averas, and on what. So there's this issue that always comes up, is that if we're asking Hashem to be good to us and to save us from all these terrible situations we get into, that we have to have some kind of schis for that. We have to have some deserve it in some way to get that kind of special treatment. So this is going to deal with some of those kinds of questions. Okay, so Lamed Seif Mizmor the David. He's got a rather complicated gematria here about Mizmor. He does say an interesting thing. David is the gematria of Hod, and Hod. Hod, yeah. So Hod is, of course, directly related to Tehillim, because it's praising Hashem. I won't go into all this; it's kind of complicated. Anyway, so he says that this Mizmor this is Kan Tzippor again, for those that haven't seen this before. Okay, so the Malchus, the Midah of Malchus, that's a Shechina, the divine presence, which is the female attribute, and that's generally considered like the attribute that's going in together with the Yidden into Golus. That the Shechina is what's with us together. It's like compared to the queen or the mother. That's all. The Shechina is always compared to that feminine aspect, and the masculine aspect is what we call Zer Anpin Tiferes, which is Mashpia. It's giving over into the Shechina. So when there's always this idea of reconciliation. There's all the mashalim, all of the metaphors are generally talking about that the king gets angry with the queen for some reason, or gets angry with the children and sends them away, and then has to be reconciliated and bring them back. And that's the whole process that keeps repeating itself. That there's this they do something wrong, and it's usually the child that does something wrong, and then the mother goes into exile with the child. And then in that way is separated from the king, and then something has to bring them back all back together again. So that's what's going. That's this continual process of Golus, that we have constantly being exiled from the palace, because we're really supposed to be in the palace, but every time we do something wrong, it gets to the point where you just can't. We can't be tolerated there anymore. It's got to do something. I think we may have talked about that one time in the past. This problem of that when things go too smoothly and there's no escape valve, so to speak, there's no way to release all of this guilt, let's say, that's been built up over a period of time, then things can explode altogether. And they say that's what happened by Noach, that all those generations, or thousands of years, whatever, that there was no action really taken, so that people continued to do worse and worse and worse things, until by the end of it just got so bad that the whole world had to be destroyed. So the idea of the fact that we've had already 4 times in Golus means that these. So we have the next posik. Bechu Hashem chasisi al evoisha leolam v'tzidkoscha falteni. Roughly translated, that means I will trust in you, Hashem, and I will not be embarrassed forever, and you will release me or save me with your tzedakah. Okay, so what does he mean here? So he says, what's this idea of embarrassment? Because if a person does averas, if he sins against Hashem, so that can lead to embarrassment. So I'm embarrassed with the fact that I've sinned, right? So when Hashem treats us from the level of what's called atika, which is Indian of Keser, which is this pure rachamim, this pure compassion, is like over all of the other midas. So that transcends the midas adin. That's higher than midas adin. So you're going to a higher place where it's like what do they call it? Unconditional love. It's going right back to like the top of creation. The whole reason why Hashem created us to begin with. So when we appeal to that level of going way back to the source, then we can circumvent the Midas Hadin because it's higher than Midas Hadin. That's the whole idea of it. We talk about returning the dinim to the shoyrish, to go back to the root, to go back to the source. If we can get all the way back up to the source, then we can circumvent this whole process of din. It's like it goes beyond that. It's like asking Hashem, so why did you create us to begin with? So it's like going back to creation to begin with. We're resetting the whole thing. We're saying go back to the whole intention of creation. Intention was to have a Jewish people on the world. So now you're going to destroy us because we did something wrong. I mean, go back to think about why we're here to begin with. And obviously we're doing tshuva, but it's like the problem is how do we pay for? The whole problem with tshuva is that if you have to, they used to talk about something. They don't talk about it so much anymore. They used to talk about tshuvas on mishkal. There's an idea that you have to repay for what you did in something that's of a similar value. In other words, when you have to pay a debt, if you did damage, so you have to pay back the damage with something of with something that's like a debt to pay. You're indebted. So if we're expected to pay up for all the damage we did, and there's something that's of similar value, we'll never get done with it. And we're talking about all the aveos of Klal Yisrael. It'd have to be pretty serious. So we try to get to a point where we go back to this complete rachamim, which is the Indian of Tzid Koska, which is, he says, it's Tzadik Shel Kuf. Kuf is a Keser, and Tzadik is an idea of this rachamim. And Palteni, and that will save me from the Mekatrigan, from all of those bringing the complaints against me. Because remember, there's this heavenly court, and there are these Melochim that are always trying to bring complaints against the Yidden, like in the UN or something. And they have to be dealt with in some way. So if we're not going to directly answer them, we're just like trumping them. We're going, excuse the pun. We're going higher than them.
Who's talking about puns? There's no pun there. That's real. That's reality.
That's reality. Is we're going to the higher level where we have like extra protectia, and that's where we get we deal with them, or we go to a higher place. So it's like in the old days of monarchies and kings that really had power. So if you knew the king personally, so you could get rid of a lot of the complaints. A lot of the people who were on a lower level that had tinus, and then you just go to the king himself, and you don't have to worry about them so much. Hati elai oznecha. So bend your ear to me. Mehera hatzileni, quickly and save me, rescue me. Heyeli litzir mo'oiz leves mitzidois lahoishieni. So you should be for me atzur ma'oiz, like a strong rock, right? Leves mitzidois lahoishieni. So now we're using two different metaphors for the idea of what do you want? Our strength, or the rock that we can depend on, right? This dependable entity that we have, on our side. So one is the tzur, which is like the idea of a rock, and then the other one is beis mitzidus, which is a fortress. So Hashem is sometimes referred to as a rock. All these things are not just synonyms that are used without a cheshbon, without a reason. Each word has its own particular meaning, even though they function the same way. They're both talking about something that's going to save us. But he talks about here that there's a difference between the idea of tzur and mitzida. That a mitzida is a fortress, means that you're being attacked. So if you've got all these enemies that are trying to destroy you, then Hashem is our fortress. He's fighting off the enemies. Whereas the tzur is just the idea of something that even at all times or even in good times it's just a real strong, fundamental, stable thing that we can count on, like the Indian of something that we can totally rely on. So that's and the next pasuk uses the same imagery. It says Kisali emitzi dusi ota, because you are both my rock and my fortress. So both of those aspects. And when everything's okay, so you're my rock, and when I get into trouble, then you're my Metzuda, you're my fortress, you're my defense. So and for the sake of your name, you will save me and lead me and take care of me. So this idea of that what are we doing here? So again, the whole idea of a tefillah, and Tehillim are definitely tefillahs, especially in times of trouble, like this one. So what is the function of a tefillah? A tefillah is really operating on two levels. It's operating on the level of a reflexive level in terms of what it's doing for us, and on the second and on the other side of it is that we're being ma'oira, we're stimulating, we're activating a midah, that's a quality of Hashem, that by acknowledging this quality of Hashem and confronting Hashem with that quality, then we're asking Him, we're begging Him to use that quality. In other words, if we don't acknowledge it, then we can't ask Him to relate to us through that particular midah. Hashem chooses to relate to us through one of these middas, whether it's chesed, love, or fear, or victory, or the whole list of middas, right? So we are in a sense moving this hashpua, the way that Hashem is relating to us is in the terms of a midah. We're trying to shift the midah into the particular thing we need right now. So we are doing that through tefillah. Through tefillah, we're using these words, which are kind of directing our tefillah into the right address, to be able to activate and benefit from that particular hanhoga, that particular behavior or attribute of Hashem that he's activating. So in this case, he says what we're doing here is reminding Hashem, in a sense, of kind of his responsibilities, because it says that if a person's wife is captured, then he is required to pay, like if there's a pidyon, pidyon shviyim, if a person's captured and they're requesting a ransom, so he has to pay the ransom to get her out, right? That's his responsibility as being her husband. So he can't just lead her off or something. He can't give her a get and say, okay, well, now I don't have anything to do with you. I mean, this is one of the biggest problems today in terms of women who are, well, that's part of it, yeah. They don't even give a get. That's when they don't give a get. But what I'm saying is like a situation where a woman becomes not well, usually mentally, let's say. So there's a requirement of the man to heal his wife. And a lot of men, they get into the situation that they just kind of abandon their wives. They give her a get, and then I had enough of it. And that's a very big shayla, because really you're required to heal your wife. Sometimes it gets so bad that you can't even give her; she's not capable of receiving a get even, and then you have to have a heter me'rabonim in order to be able to take another wife as well. And that is done. But at one time it was extremely difficult. Now it's become a lot easier. But anyway, in either case, the point is that you have responsibility. So we're reminding Hashem, look, we're your wife. You gave us the Torah and Har Sinai. That was basically a marriage contract. And now we're being attacked, or we're being, enslaved, or the whole idea of Golus is we are in exile. We've been captured, and now we're asking you to release us from that from that slavery, that bondage. So by being, he says that when the Malchus, when the Shechina is meir the moichin, so then it was by talking in this level, by coming to this level of understanding of our relationship, and by entreating Hashem to treat us in a certain way, entreating Hashem to treat us, we're begging Hashem to relate to us with this thing. It's causing the whole thing to be elevated from a situation of just yush, of desperation and panic, and all of the opposite of using any kind of intellect to figure this out or to deal with it. And we just kind of plots all together, and then people start screaming and having tainas on Hashem, and I don't know what to do, and getting all. So instead of that, we're looking back into how does the Torah look at this, and how is it dealing with these kinds of problems? And it's telling us, look, this is what we're putting it down in such a way that now we're using the intellect to illuminate the whole picture. So now we're able to get a handle on it, and we're able to deal with it in a certain way. So we're dealing it now with seichel. We're not just, coming screaming into the courtroom or something, with nothing to say. We actually have a taina here. We're saying we have a certain claim that, this is something that Hashem has to deal with. So the very fact that we're now illuminating the picture makes it easier to deal with, because he says it's creating a partzuf sholem, like a complete picture of the whole thing. So then it's elevated to a higher level, and Hashem recognizes us as His wife, so to speak, and that He is required to save us, and that already that makes Him into that puts Him in a position of saving us. So when the Yidden are on this higher level, then it's the Hashem is called the Selah, this rock. And when we're on a very low level, then we talk about the Metzudah, which is this fortress which is being caused because of the dinim. So now, so we're trying to get out of the dinim, so we can get out of that position of being attacked and in the fortress. Okay, so then he says, "Toitzieni me reshes zi tomni li ki atamu izi." So again, we're appealing to Hashem. We're saying, get us out of this trap. In other words, the makatrigim, the enemies, whatever, have set a trap for us. It's like a net that they set out to capture us. And so we're saying, release it when we've fallen into the net, basically. And what does that mean? I mean, that means either they've gotten the upper hand, or that we were stupid enough to listen to the Yetzer Hara, which is the whole. It's all in cahoots. And it was the Yetzer Hara and the Satan and the Mekatrik and everything else. It's all working together to try to ensnare us. It's like the sting operation. So we fell into the trap. We did the wrong thing, and now we got into trouble. So now we're asking Hashem to get us out of there. So Totzieni Meshazi, to get take me out of this trap that I fell into. That they hid. In order to they hid the trap to ensnare me, and also he says that during the time of the Chorban, which is what we're talking about, the time of Golus, it means the destruction of the Beis Mikdash. So he says that the test spheres, that the 9 out of the 10 spheres were given over to the Zeir Anpin. In other words, the Shekhinah lost. The Shekhinah has each of the midas is comprised of 10. Right? There's 10 altogether, and each one is comprised of 10. The sphere of Malchus, which is the Shekhinah, had originally 10, but during the Chorban, 9 of those went back up to Zeir Anpin, up to Tiferes. It left. It was taken away from us.
So during the what?
The time of the Golus.
The Golus.
Yeah. The Chorban created that situation. It kind of emptied us out. It took away all of these milas that we had and all these things we had to work with, and all these benefits and qualities that we had, and put them back into Zeir Anpin, which they just kind of left. So now we have to try to get them back. So in the time, it says in the time of the second temple, so Hashem gave it back. So that's b'yadcha afkid richi podise oisi Hashem kel emes. So Hashem gave it back at the time of the second temple. But then it doesn't go on with that. Then he says, "Sanesi hashoimrim havle shal ani el Hashem botafti." So that again is going back to this again this idea that really talking about a kind of anti-Semitism here. It can be interpreted, and we'll go into that a little bit later. It's very interesting how he brings that out. But again, he's talking about these enemies, these people that hate me. We talked before many times about this idea of the sinna and the jealousy of the malachim, the angels towards man as a whole, and particularly of the Yidden, because of the fact that Hashem gives us so much attention, He gave us the Torah and everything else, and they really wanted it, and that they had tinus to begin with of why Hashem created man to begin with. So, and didn't just stick with them. Why should He put His main emphasis down here? So there's that basic sinna that they're always trying to show how bad we are, and he says that so they call them the shoimrim hevlei shav, that they're like the gatekeepers. They're the guards, and they have all these empty sinna against me. Nisa nesi oisam, and I hated them because they're constantly pursuing me. And because of that, I'm enduring all the suffering. This is because of this dynamic that's going on here. That's why I'm always suffering with dealing with their all the time. And it's interesting that this idea that anti-Semitism, for example, in this world, it never really lets up. It may become a little more dormant for a while, but like we see today, there's absolutely no reason why all of a sudden these things should be happening and things should be cropping up, out of nowhere. But it's happening, which just shows it's just always there. And it's always just, in the background. And sometimes it's given more, for whatever reason, it's allowed to come, to the fore, and other times it's more under control. But it never goes away. And that's it's a very rude awakening for a lot of American Jews.
It's a halacha. It's in the Bria.
Right.
It's
right,
just a given.
But why is that again? Going back to the shorish of that, it's because the Malachim don't like us. It's going all the way back to that.
It's because we're not doing our avodah.
Right. Okay. I can answer that two ways. Okay. Number one, of course, if we were doing avodah, then Mashiach would be here, and then everybody would be happy, including the Malachim. Everybody would be fine, because then it would be everything on balance, and everything would be, everything would be united, and there would be no tinus, there would be no problem. And we wouldn't even have a Yetzer Hara anymore, so we wouldn't do anything bad. So the Malachim wouldn't have any tinus that we're doing a Chilul Hashem. So you would see that the whole thing's working the way it's supposed to. Okay, but before Mashiach comes, okay, so then even though we may be doing the right thing, they're still going to have a taina, because they're still, first of all, they're going to be chosheh, they're going to suspect us that we're going to blow it at some point, because we've gone back and forth many times in the past, and also the whole situation hasn't really been resolved. It hasn't really been it's not yet where it's supposed to be. So they're always going to feel this jealousy, like why are we getting a lot of attention? Why were they replaced? Why were they put in the background, and all of a sudden we got the foreground, right? When it gets to the point where it's all where it's supposed to be, then everybody sees everybody's bottle, and everybody sees how that this is what Hashem had in mind. This is what was supposed to happen, and but it didn't. It's not there yet. Okay, anyway, so he says, so there's this constant back and forth between us and our enemies, and save us from them, even though, so we're saying to Hashem, save us from them, even though we didn't do the right thing. We admit we're guilty, we did bad things, but even so, save us. It was even though they may they may be justified in their complaints against us. They're talking right, but still, don't give in to them. Just realize what this whole thing is about. And after all, Hashem ultimately takes some of the blame because He gave us the Yetzer Hara to begin with. So that's, Hashem realizes that, if I didn't give him the Yetzer Hara, so, but that can't let him get off scot-free, because then there's no midas hadin, so, you can't do that either. Anyway, so, Agila ve'esmecha b'chazdechu, asher ru'iso es oni yudatu betzuras nafshi. So now, we put down our arguments, now Hashem, we said what we were going to say, and now I'm happy, now that I got it out, now that I was able to define it, and I was able to figure it out and put it in a reasonable, understandable, lucid petition, okay? So I put it down. So now I can be happy that you're going to listen. And that is the other aspect of tefillah. Tefillah is a chizik, because we have bituchen that Hashem is ultimately going to listen to us. And that we know that if the tainas are correct, and they are reasonable things that we're saying here, that Hashem will. So I'm happy with your chesed. As if you already resolved the situation, as if it was already done. You daven with a full heart. You really pour out your heart, and you daven, and then it brings you to simcha. You feel not just because you relieve the pressure. It's because you really believe that it's going to help. It's going to eventually do something. So it's only that you see my poverty, and that's also the difference. The reason why we have to come to tefillah is that we shouldn't, for ourselves, that we shouldn't still be in a matzav like yudi. In other words, that I have the power to change my own destiny. As long as I don't come to this, even the 12-step program talks about this. As long as a person doesn't come to rock bottom and realize it's not under my control, I have to rely on Hashem. It's bigger than me. I have to give it over to Hashem. So that's like this kind of honesty, this kind of, I don't have any more eitzes. I can't do it on my own. I can't figure something out that's going to save me on my own. I know that I'm totally putting myself in Hashem's hands. So once I do that, then it's like I've given myself over to Hashem totally. So then Hashem was waiting for that, like He was waiting for us to finally get to that point of humility, and then He can start to save us. So that's another very important aspect of Tehillim. So just the acknowledgement of that we have no schemes up our what do they call it, up our sleeve, that we some more cards to play or something, that it's done. We're over. We gave up already. So it's okay. So Choneni Hashem Kitzarli, bring your chen. We're relying again on chen. Choinen is also a lashon of chinam. It's like for nothing. We're not. We don't have anything to give you for this. This is just pure for nothing. This is free love. It's like it's something that we're not expecting to pay for. But it's something that's just of a chen. It says chen isha al bala, that a man loves his wife, and Hashem we have a chen in the eyes of Hashem. Hashem, it's a certain charm or whatever that Hashem loves us, and that's that doesn't go away. Kitzar li, because I'm in trouble. It's very difficult times. And oshe shobekas eini nafshi ivitni. So it's a little more complicated. So anyway, so he's saying, did I skip something here? Yeah. Oh, so he brings it down. He says that this is really talking about each of the Golus, and he says, Asher isi es oni bebovel, yodot betzuris nafshi b'madai, v'lo yiskatani b'yad oye b'yovan, hamatam raglai be'edoim. So this is referring to the four Golusim, and that Hashem should hear our tefillas and rescue us from each of these Golusim. And specifically from the Golus Edom, which is the Golus that we're in now, because that's extremely long. That's like very, very, very wide and difficult Golus, and that's what he says. Hamata merchav raglai. It's just the width, the breadth of it is just so vast that finally get us that this is a real major challenge to rescue us from this particular Golus, which is the Golus Edom, which is
people living in Sfaradim. It's also Edom or Ishmael? Because half of us were...
It's a good question. I think Ishmael and Edom are related. They're very often spoken of in the same terms. Like Ishmael and Edom are it's kind of a partnership in a sense. Even though they ultimately will probably fight each other as well. And they have fought each other. But it's kind of a shitfus type of thing, I think. It's interesting. They don't talk specifically about a Golus of Yishmael. So apparently, it's always considered to be that Edom is dominant. But it definitely is, also very difficult. Okay, so it's Choneni Hashem Kitzar li Choneni Hashem v'Golias Titin li Chen. Okay, Chen is also, he says gematria oizen. And Tsar li, the Tsar is the motion to katnus. The Tsar is this narrowness, so it's also a narrow-mindedness. It's a falling to a level of pettiness and not being able to understand what's going on. So he should save us from that as well. And because he says that the Elokim is b'mili aleph, when you write it out, the letters and fill it in with the aleph, it's gematria Tsar. With the kolos, and Elokim is dinim, and dinim is constriction. So Ashavikas Eini, so that's the eyes of Malchus are in kas because of all these dinim. So that's a kas eini. The anger of my eyes is just because it's full with these dinim. A person is seeing a description of a chasana that took place around the turn of the century in Europe, and the guy was writing it was a kid at the time, and he just said that everybody was like angry. People were like, they didn't have any patience, they didn't have any nerves for kids or whatever. They were like, it was a pressured time, and people were under a lot of it was a lot of oppression, a lot of persecution, and just people were all kind of all uptight.
100 years, 70 years.
It was around the turn of the century. That's over 100 years. 120 years ago. But it's just that there was a period. Before the First World War.
Sorry?
Before the First World War.
Before the First World War.
1900.
Yeah, 1900. Okay.
So that was a real, difficult time, and people were very ungezeugen, as they say. They were very uptight. And that's what happens when a person faces dinim. Nafshi ivitni. So it says that the only thing I was left with was nafshi. That's nekuda ikris, like I'm left with my essence, but only that. Everything else has been taken away from me, so all I'm left with is my essence. And bitni, as it says in Moichin Emo, so there's a betin is again this feminine thing, and also bitni is gematria elim. So if you take the Shem Elokim and you take out the yud k from it, you're just left with elim, which is like a dumb person can't speak, mute. So a person basically when they're left with nothing, they can't even talk. There's nothing to talk about. Okay, so kicholi biyugoin chayai ishnoisei ba'anucha kushel ba'avoini koichi ve'atzumai osheshi. So he says that this is talking about the zocher and the keva of the sitra achra. There's a feminine and masculine and feminine aspect to the other side, and that's yugun ve'anucha. Yugun and anucha is very often used together to signify pain and suffering and just general sighing and very, very unhealthy state of mind, to put it lightly. Okay, so because again he refers back to this idea that the sitra achra, the other side has taken 9 out of the 10 milas that we had, and now we're left just struggling with nothing to just show for ourselves. So it's kosher ba'avoni koichi, and you can see this a little bit like you could compare that to the times when there was a lot of right after the First World War, actually, particularly when you had all of these the Haskalah and the communists and the Zionists and all these people that were really chipping away at or devastating Yiddishkeit from inside. It was either Jews that were specifically trying to destroy Yiddishkeit. They were b'kavanah. They were trying to do it, and it was like the whole Yiddishkeit was just on the defensive. They're always trying to, against the Bible critics and against the Avakosim and this and that and the other thing. And they were all, the religious people were under fire. Communism was a tremendous challenge. Atheism and all these things. And Jews were just going away by the droves. And what were we left with? What do we have to, left to be able to do with that? And it was throughout history. I mean, you had that even in the golden age of Spain, fighting off the philosophers, and in times of the Christian inquisitions and various things. So it's this feeling of like a helplessness and a powerlessness, and like what do we still have to show for ourselves to work with? We don't have what to work with. All our power has been taken away. So only that nekuda, that essence, that point, that makes us Jewish. So with the pintel yid, you could say, that point that we always have, that always stays with us. But all the richness around it has been taken away. So mikol tzoyrai hayisi cherpa v'lishreinai me'oid v'pachad liyim yudoi roya gachitz noddi mimeni. So it's again this idea of this isolation, and the cherpa is referring to the reish pei ches nitzitzin. That's these sparks that have flown away, that have been swallowed up from among us. These are what all that we had has now been like swallowed up from our enemies, and now I have to be wandering all over the place. So the idea of Golus is wandering. So if you're away from home, then you're basically just don't have any place to rest, and they're trying. So now I have to but this idea, because of our virus, so the nitzitzis, these sparks, are spread out all over the place, and now I have to be in Golus to pick them up. The whole idea of us being spread all around the world is to pick up the nitzitzis, whether it's in the form of gerim or it's in various other things that we have to be in a different place in a different time to be able to rescue these sparks of kedusha that have been swallowed up by the goyim, and that's the reason why we're in Golus. So because of this, so what's interesting is he says it very, very, very nicely here, that it says there's a statement in Avodah Zarah. It says Roiv Ganva Yisrael Nini, that most of the thieves are Jews. So why does it make such a statement? Because
in the Zohar?
Huh? No, in the Gemara. Gemara Avodah Zarah. Yeah. So why does it say that it says, and it says by Yaakov that he was by Yignoiv Yaakov as Leiv Lovan Harami. He stole the hearts, so to speak, this Genevas Das, Genevas Leiv. He tricked him. He deceived him. Whatever. So what is this talking about? Because of the fact that we have to take back these nitzitzis, so we become enriched from the nitzitzis, and the goyim become impoverished. And it was by the same way as Lavan, there were nitzitzis that Yaakov had to rescue from the flocks of Lavan. And Lavan all of a sudden saw that he's getting that he's going down, and Yaakov is getting rich, and he feels like he's getting it from him. He's like exploiting it from him. So then he had with a sinner against. He starts hating Yaakov, and he wants to get rid of him and expel him. Well, he didn't want to expel him actually, but he escaped, whatever. But the point is that he felt that he was that he was stealing from him in some way. So what's the idea? That it is a very interesting thing that Mark Twain is a very famous American writer, and around the turn of the century, around the 1900s, he wrote an essay about the Jews, and his main explanation for anti-Semitism is because the Jews are just better businessmen than the Goyim, and they end up doing more business, and then the Goyim feel jealous that they're getting this, taking away the business from them, so to speak, and that's the major cause for anti-Semitism. So what we could talk about here is all this stuff is just symbolic. I mean, what's the idea of Jews getting the money from the Goyim? The money is just an expression of the nitzitzis. That these are the Jews are doing business to be able to get back these sparks that are spread all over the place. So, but the Goyim interpret that as meaning that the Goyim that the Yidden are taking away from them. Actually, most of the time, the countries that after the war, they were saying, now what do we do? That we got rid of the Jews, and they were the ones who were bringing us all the business. In other words, that the Jews are actually good for the economy, and then they're just blaming the Jews that they're bad, that they are taking away stuff from them. So this is, perennially, this is...
We can never win.
Yeah, exactly. But it's stacked against us. But I'm saying this is the cycle. In other words, we get impoverished, we get thrown out, we go to someplace else, then we start doing business, and then because we have to attract these nitzitzis, that's why we were put in that place to begin with. So now to get back those nitzitzis, now the whole thing starts over again. They start hating us, and then it inflames the anti-Semitism and this kind of thing because they get jealous. So it's just this cycle. So he spells it out right here. He says this is what it's talking about. So that this is that they're hating me and they're doing this to me because and they're Messiah me because this is what's going on. So he says because they're afraid of me. It's like this idea of the xenophobic, that when given people feel that some other people is coming in from the outside and taking away their jobs and taking away this and that from them, so then they start to hate those people. So this is what's happened to us all. Any foreigners, anybody who's coming from outside. So they're all hating me, and they're all disgracing me and all this stuff. So it's nishkachti kameis milev hayisi kli oived. So now he says nishkachti kameis milev is talking about that this is a gzeira on a person when they die, that they're forgotten. Because you ultimately forget a person after they're nifter, because you're not, otherwise you go crazy just thinking about it all the time. So eventually, there's the whole thing with Yosef, and because he didn't forget about him, that was a simon that he actually didn't die. So this is a characteristic of people that are nifter. So when I'm in such a low state, that when I see the how long the Golus is still continuing, so it seems to me as if I'm dead and completely forgotten. Like Hashem is like abandoned me altogether. He's not even thinking about me anymore. So it's like I'm a lost Keli. He's a Kli Ovid. It's just something that just got lost and it's not being found. So even though, despite that, I still have. Oh, no, it's like this. When a person loses something, they still want to be able to find it. They have a desire to still, I really missed that thing that I had, and I would really still like to find it. But if a person is dead altogether, then they're gone. Then they're not even remembered. So it says, "Ayizikli oived." I know that the Balabais, which is Hashem, still desires me, still hasn't forgotten about me, and he wants me to come back to him. And that is my what's the saying? Like, in other words, it would be comforting to me if I would know that Hashem treats me as a keli, and it was as a lost object as opposed to as being dead altogether. So, yeah. So then he says, "Kishamati dibas rabim mugor misoviv hivostam yachad olai lekach nafshi zamomi." So again, I'm just hearing all of this, these terrible statements that they're making about me, and that they want to destroy me altogether, and take me out of the world altogether. So they wanted to take me out of the world altogether. So that's you can talk about that as being before the Holocaust. I mean, we heard Hitler and all the anti-Semites and everybody were talking about how they wanted to destroy the Yidden, and that was really their intention. So it was to take us out of the world, destroy. I mean, here Iran, the way they talk. I mean, it's such absolute terms, like get rid of them, kill all the Jews, like this guy in Pittsburgh. Kill all the Jews. It's absolute terms. Get them out of the world. We don't want them in the world at all.
Exactly. So that the name Israel not be remembered ever. Just
right. Exactly. Exactly. So he says, "Amarti ani la'atzmi." So I said to myself, "Elokai ato." So you are my God. And I see that I saw in Mitzrayim and at the Kabbalah Torah that you are my God, that you have a direct connection to me, right? So and you're always looking out for my good. So it must be that also now, in this Yesidim that I'm having now, it's also l'toiva. It must be that something good is going to come out of it in the end. So because of that, biyadchi toisai, kol isoisai hem biyadcha. Everything's in your hands, and you can find me whenever you want to, and I will look for you now. And you will save me from the hands of all these enemies. But I'm asking, it says, but I'm asking that even if that even if I'm in these dire straits, this difficult situation, that you will shine your face upon me, and you will save me with your chesed. And even if it's not possible right now, I'm not on a level to. If I'm not on the level that you should be able to save me out of my own merits, that the yeshua should come from midas chesed. That just out of your own goodness, that you should save me regardless, even though that you should save me out of your own chesed, even if I'm not deserving. Okay, stop there for now.